The key arrived in an unmarked envelope 3 days before Halloween. I held it in my palm, a brass thing, cold and heavy, with teeth that looked too sharp for a standard deadbolt. The realtor had warned me about renting the Marlow house, had actually tried to talk me out of it twice during our phone call. She used words like unfortunate history and previous tenant complications, which in California realtor speak usually meant someone died of natural causes and now the place had a reputation. I didn't care about reputations. I cared about downloads. My podcast, Residual Evidence, had plateaued at 40,000 subscribers 8 months ago. I needed something that would trend, something that would get me invited back onto the bigger shows, the ones with Patreon tiers and merchandise deals. The Marlow house was perfect. 5 family members slaughtered on the 31st of October 1983. Killer never found. A house left exactly as it was during the police investigation until the bank foreclosed in 1987. Since then, it had cycled through short-term renters who all broke their leases within weeks, citing various reasons that ranged from structural settling noises to psychological distress. One woman claimed she found her reflection in the bathroom mirror, pointing at something behind her. When she turned around, nothing was there. When she looked back, her reflection was screaming. I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed in good audio. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac in Redlands, California, where the orange groves had been bulldozed to make room for subdivisions that never quite thrived. The neighborhood had that specific quality of places abandoned by optimism. Cracked driveways, dead lawns, foreclosure notices weathering on porches like dried leaves. The Marlow house was the crown jewel. 2 stories of mid-century modern architecture that had gone feral. All sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that stared back at you like compound eyes. I pulled my rental car into the driveway at 4:47 p.m. on October 28th. The sun was already bleeding out across the horizon, turning the sky the color of infected tissue. I had 3 days to record, to soak in the atmosphere, to find whatever angles hadn't been exploited by the 40 years of amateur investigators who came before me. I had my equipment in the trunk, 2 shotgun mics, a digital recorder, a camera for supplemental footage, and enough batteries to power a small village. The key turned smoothly, which surprised me. I expected resistance, expected the mechanism to have corroded or seized. Instead, the door swung inward on silent hinges, releasing a breath of air that smelled like old plaster and something else, something coppery and sweet, like pennies dissolving in honey. The interior was preserved in amber. The Marlow family had been wealthy, and their taste ran toward the kind of minimalist brutalism that was coming back into fashion among people who didn't have to live with it. Concrete floors, exposed beams, furniture that looked designed to punish the human spine. The police tape was long gone, but someone, probably a previous renter with a sense of theater, had outlined 5 human shapes on the living room floor in red paint. They were positioned around a coffee table that still bore the ring stains of the drinks the family had been enjoying when the night went wrong. I set up my equipment in the kitchen, figuring it was the most neutral space. The refrigerator hummed to life when I flipped the breaker, which the realtor had assured me would function. I stocked it with mineral water and protein bars, the diet of the serious podcaster. I didn't plan on sleeping much. I planned on working. By 9 p.m., I had my first episode's worth of ambient room tone recorded. The house had excellent acoustics. Too excellent. Every footstep echoed longer than it should have, creating the impression that someone was walking behind you, mimicking your pace but never quite catching up. I kept turning around to find empty space, my own heartbeat loud in my ears. The attic access was in the master bedroom closet. I found it while searching for the circuit breaker, which the realtor had neglected to specify, was located behind a panel in the hallway. The attic stairs folded down with a shriek of rusted springs that sounded almost human. I stood at the bottom, shining my phone's flashlight up into the darkness, waiting for my eyes to adjust. That's when I saw the box. It was a shoebox, the kind with a removable lid, the kind children keep treasures in. But this was covered in dust, so thick it had become fur, gray and soft and undisturbed. It sat on the attic floor directly above the spot where the largest bloodstain had pooled in the living room below. Directly above where David Marlow, the father, had been found with his throat open to the spine. I shouldn't have touched it. I know that now. But I was thinking about content, about the episode where I reveal my discovery, about the thumbnail image of me holding the box with a shocked expression. I was thinking about metrics, not consequences. The lid came off with a sound like tearing skin. Inside, nestled in yellowed newspaper from 1983, was a VHS tape. The label had been handwritten in black marker, the letters shaky and uneven, as if written by someone who couldn't quite control their hands. Halloween, 1983. My pulse quickened. This was gold. Actual physical evidence, untouched for 4 decades. I had a VHS player in my car. I collect vintage media equipment for B-roll footage. I ran downstairs, retrieved it, and set it up on the living room floor, connecting it to a portable monitor I use for field reviews. The tape slid into the mechanism with a satisfying mechanical click. The player whirred, the heads engaged, and the screen flickered from blue to black. Then I saw them. The footage was grainy, shot on what must have been early consumer-grade video equipment. It showed the living room I was sitting in, but different, furnished, alive. A pumpkin sat on the coffee table, carved with a face that seemed to grimace rather than grin. 5 people occupied the space. David Marlow, tall and thin, with the kind of mustache that aged poorly. His wife Patricia, beautiful in that brittle 1980s way, all shoulder pads and hairspray. Their 3 children, Michael, 16, sullen and slouched, Jennifer, 12, holding a plastic candy bucket, and the youngest, Christopher, maybe 8, sitting cross-legged on the floor in a Spider-Man costume. They were watching something off camera. A television, probably. The camera angle was wrong for a home movie. It was positioned low, near the floor, looking up at the family from a vantage point that suggested it had been set on the ground or held by someone kneeling. The perspective made the room feel vast, the ceiling impossibly high, the family small and vulnerable in the center of the frame. I checked the timestamp in the corner of the screen. 10:47 p.m., the 31st of October, 1983. The exact time the police estimated the murders began. I should have stopped the tape. I should have called the police, or at least stopped looking. But I couldn't. There was something hypnotic about the footage, something that made my eyes refuse to blink. The family on screen continued watching their invisible entertainment, occasionally laughing at jokes I couldn't hear, occasionally reaching for snacks from bowls that sat on the same coffee table where I had placed my recorder. The camera moved. Not the camera. The perspective shifted. It was subtle at first, a slow crawl across the carpet that I almost missed. Then it became obvious, deliberate. The viewpoint was advancing on the family from behind the sofa, moving at a pace that suggested patience, that suggested someone who had all the time in the world. The Marlows didn't notice. They kept watching their show, kept laughing, kept living. The perspective reached the back of the sofa. I could see the individual fibers of the upholstery now, could count the threads. The camera, or whatever was recording, rose slowly, smoothly, until it was looking over the back of the couch, directly at the family's exposed necks. I realized I was holding my breath. On screen, little Christopher turned around. His Spider-Man mask was pushed up onto his forehead, and his face was open, curious, unafraid. He was looking directly into the camera, looking directly at me.
Mom, there's someone behind us.
Patricia Marlow turned, her movement casual, almost annoyed, the universal posture of a parent responding to a child's imaginary friend. Her face changed when she saw whatever was behind the sofa. I didn't see her expression clearly. The camera was still positioned behind the furniture, still hidden, but I saw her throat work. I saw her hand reach for her husband's arm with the kind of desperate grip that communicates danger faster than words. David turned more slowly, confused, irritated at the interruption. Then he saw it too. His mouth opened. No sound came out on the tape, or if it did, the audio had degraded to the point of silence. He stood up, placing himself between the camera and his family, and I saw his shoulders square in that primitive male posture of protection that never actually protects anyone from anything.
Who are you? How did you get in?
The camera didn't answer. It rose higher, ascending until it was looking down at David from above, from a height that no human could achieve while standing. David's head tilted back to follow its movement, and his composure cracked. He took a step backward, bumping into the coffee table, sending the pumpkin rocking.
Get out! Get out of my house!
His voice was shaking now. The camera descended. Fast. Impossibly fast. It covered the distance from ceiling to floor in less than a second, and then David Marlow was gone from the frame, and there was a sound like wet laundry being torn, and Patricia was screaming, a high continuous note that the tape's audio faithfully preserved, despite its age. I wanted to look away. I couldn't. The camera turned, slowly, lovingly, to capture the rest of the room. Michael had grabbed Jennifer and was dragging her toward the hallway, but the perspective shifted again, cutting them off, appearing in front of them as if it could teleport. Michael stopped, his face white, his teenage bravado evaporating. He pushed his sister behind him, which was brave and useless. Christopher was still sitting on the floor where I'd first seen him. He hadn't moved. His Spider-Man mask had fallen back down over his face, and he was looking through the eye holes with an expression I can only describe as waiting. The camera approached him. The perspective lowered until it was at his eye level, until the frame was filled with the red and blue fabric of his costume, with the web pattern printed cheaply on nylon.
Are you the one who lives in the walls?
The tape cut to static. Not the gray and white snow of a dead channel, but a roiling, seething darkness that seemed to move with purpose. I stared at the screen, my hands numb, my mouth dry. I told myself it was a fake, a hoax, something created by previous renters to mess with the next occupant. The dates aligned. The tape could have been recorded yesterday and artificially aged. The footage could have been staged with actors. The murder could have been ketchup and good lighting. But I had researched the Marlow case for 6 months. I knew what Christopher Marlow had said to the police officers who arrived first on the scene before he died in the ambulance from blood loss. I knew because I had read the sealed deposition, had paid a clerk in the records office $200 to look the other way while I photographed documents that should have been destroyed. Christopher had told them about the man who lived in the walls. He had described how the man came out on Halloween night, how he had been waiting for a long time, how he collected things. Faces, Christopher had said. He collects faces. The static on the screen resolved. The footage resumed, but the timestamp had jumped forward. It now read 11:31 p.m. The living room was empty of living people. The pumpkin had been smashed, its orange guts smeared across the coffee table in patterns that might have been accidental or might have been deliberate, might have been writing in a language I didn't recognize. The camera was moving through the house now, exploring, documenting. It passed through the kitchen, where someone had written on the refrigerator in what I desperately hoped was marker. It passed through the dining room, where the chairs had been arranged in a circle facing inward, each seat occupied by a jacket or a dress, stuffed with something that gave them the approximate shape of people. It climbed the stairs. The perspective swayed with each step, mimicking the gait of someone ascending slowly, savoring the approach. The hallway at the top was dark, but the camera didn't seem to need light. It turned left, toward the master bedroom, and pushed through the door. Patricia Marlow was there. She had been nailed to the wall above the bed with what looked like long metal spikes. Construction nails, maybe, or something worse. Her arms were outstretched, her legs together, her body forming a shape that was unmistakably deliberate. Her face was turned toward the camera, and her eyes were open, and she was still alive. Her mouth moved. The audio crackled, but I heard her. I heard what she said.
It's wearing my husband's fucking face.
I vomited. I couldn't help it. The protein bars and mineral water came up in a rush of acid and shame, splattering on the concrete floor beside the VHS player. I scrambled backward, away from the screen, my heels digging furrows in the dust, and I hit the wall hard enough to knock the wind out of me. The tape was still playing. I could hear it. The wet sounds, the rhythmic thumping, the silence where Patricia's voice had been. I didn't look. I couldn't look. I pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw stars, until the pressure created its own darkness, and I counted my breaths, trying to find the rational center of my brain, the part that knew this was impossible, that knew tapes didn't record invisible killers, that knew I was having some kind of psychological episode triggered by isolation and caffeine. The house was silent, except for the whir of the VHS player and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Then, footsteps. Above me, in the attic. I lowered my hands. I looked up. The ceiling was smooth plaster, painted white, innocent, but I could feel the weight of something moving up there, something heavy and deliberate, something that walked with a gait that suggested too many joints or not enough. The footsteps stopped directly above me, directly above the spot where I sat. A sound came through the ceiling. It was soft, almost gentle. It was the sound of fabric tearing, of something being pulled apart with careful precision. It went on for a long time. I should have run. I know that. Every survival instinct I possessed was screaming at me to get up, to get out, to drive, until I hit the ocean and keep driving. But I thought about the footage. I thought about the timestamp, about the way the camera had moved, about the impossible angles. If this was real, if even a fraction of what I had seen was real, then I had something that no true crime podcaster had ever possessed. I had proof. I had evidence that would change everything, that would make me famous, that would validate every sleepless night and maxed out credit card and relationship I'd sacrificed on the altar of my career. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but they held. I walked to the stairs. I climbed them. The attic access was open. The stairs were unfolded. I hadn't left them that way. I took my phone from my pocket and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness above, illuminating dust motes that swam like plankton. I could smell the attic from where I stood, that specific odor of old insulation and forgotten things, but stronger now, more immediate. "Hello?" I called out, and my voice was steady, professional, the voice I used for recording. "Is someone up there?" The silence that answered was complete. Not the silence of an empty space, but the silence of something holding its breath. I climbed. The attic was different than I remembered from my earlier exploration. The dust had been disturbed, swept aside in wide arcs that suggested something large had moved through the space. The shoebox was gone, but in its place, arranged in a neat row, were 5 Polaroid photographs. I didn't want to look at them. I looked anyway. The first showed David Marlow, but wrong. His face was stretched, pulled, as if it had been removed and reapplied by someone who had only seen human anatomy in diagrams. His eyes were open, aware, and they were looking at the camera with an expression of profound betrayal. The second showed Patricia, similarly altered. The third showed Michael. The fourth, Jennifer. The fifth was blank, the white square of undeveloped film staring up at me like an unblinking eye. I understood. I understood what Christopher had meant, what Patricia had seen. The thing that lived in the walls didn't just kill, it wore. It collected. It had been waiting for 40 years for someone to find the tape, to watch it, to climb the stairs, and enter its space. The Polaroids began to develop. I watched, paralyzed, as the blank 5th photograph slowly revealed its image. It was my face. My actual face, photographed from an angle that suggested the camera had been positioned inside my own skull, looking out through my eyes. My expression was neutral, calm, unaware. The timestamp in the corner read 10:47 p.m., the 31st of October 2023. Tonight, the footsteps resumed, but they weren't above me anymore. They were behind me. They were descending the attic stairs, moving down into the house, moving toward the living room where my equipment sat recording, where my phone lay on the kitchen counter with its flashlight still blazing. I turned around. The attic was empty. The stairs were empty. But I could hear it, whatever it was, moving through the house below, exploring, remembering, preparing. I climbed down. I had to. The attic had no other exit, no window, no escape. I moved as quietly as I could, but the stairs creaked, betrayed me, announced my descent to whatever waited below. The living room was empty. My equipment had been rearranged. The camera was now positioned on the floor, facing the sofa, mimicking the angle from the tape. The recorder was running, the red light blinking steadily. The VHS player had ejected the tape, which now sat on the coffee table beside the red paint outlines of the Marlow family. There was a new outline on the floor. It was my size, my shape, positioned in the center of the room where I had been sitting when I watched the footage. I walked to the camera. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Stupidity, definitely. I looked through the viewfinder, and I saw myself standing there. Saw the room from the camera's perspective, and behind me, rising up from the floor, like smoke solidifying, was a shape. It had too many arms. That was my first thought. It had too many arms, and they were all reaching for me, and they were all wearing sleeves that I recognized. My sleeves. The jacket I had put on that morning. The jacket that was still on my body. That was somehow also on its body. I had to get out of there. I made it to the front door. My hand closed around the knob, and it turned, and the door opened, and I saw the cul-de-sac, the dead lawns, the cracked driveways, the world outside. I took one step forward, and the door slammed shut in my face with enough force to crack the wood. The deadbolt engaged. I hadn't touched it. I turned around. The living room was empty, but the camera was still running, and I could see the red light reflecting in the dark windows, twin points of color that looked like eyes. "Please," I said. I hate that I said it. I hate that I begged, but I did. "Please, I didn't mean to disturb you. I'll leave. I'll never come back. I'll never tell anyone." The house answered. The walls answered. It was a sound like wood settling, like pipes contracting. But it formed words, or approximations of words. The way wind through a crack can almost sound like whispering.
What's the rest?
That was what it said, or what the house said, or what something inside the house said. I looked at the VHS tape on the coffee table. It was vibrating, shivering, moving across the wood in small jerks like a magnet repelling it. I didn't want to touch it. I knew, with the certainty of dreams, that if I touched it, I would be touching something alive, something that had been waiting for contact for 4 decades. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I jumped, nearly screamed, fumbled it out with shaking hands. The screen showed a notification from my podcast app. My own podcast, Residual Evidence, had uploaded a new episode. The timestamp was current. The title was Static Season, Episode 1, The Marlow Tapes. I opened it. The audio began to play, and it was my voice, but not my voice. My voice the way it would sound if recorded through walls, through insulation, through time itself. I was describing the house. I was describing the tape. I was describing the footage I had just watched, but I was describing it in past tense, as if it had already happened, as if I had already lived through it and was now narrating the aftermath. By the time you hear this, I'll be part of the collection. Don't look for me, don't come here. But if you do come here, if you find this tape, watch it all. Watch it to the end. That's the only way out. The recording stopped. The phone went dark. When I tried to turn it back on, it was dead, despite showing 87% battery moments before. I was alone in the house with something that wore faces. I was alone on Halloween night, 40 years to the day after the Marlow family had been collected. And I understood finally what collection meant. It wasn't death. Death would have been a mercy. It was preservation. It was display. It was becoming part of the architecture, part of the story, part of the tape that the next curious person would find. I picked up the VHS tape. My hands were steady now. I had made my decision, or the decision had been made for me. I walked to the player and inserted the tape. I sat down in the center of the room, in the outline that matched my shape, and I pressed play. The screen flickered. The footage resumed. The camera was moving through the house again, but this time, it was different. This time I recognized the perspective. It was my perspective. It was showing what I had seen, what I was seeing, but from outside myself, from behind and above, the same angles that had captured the Marlows. I watched myself on screen, sitting on the floor, watching the screen, trapped in the infinite regression of a camera recording a camera, and behind me on the tape, rising up from the outline on the floor, was the thing with too many arms. It touched my shoulder on the screen. I felt it on my actual shoulder, cold and heavy and wrong. I didn't turn around. I kept watching. I watched as my on-screen self began to change, to stretch, to be worn. I watched my face being removed, being collected, being added to the gallery that lived in the walls. The pain was extraordinary, but it was distant, like it was happening to someone else, like I was already separating from my body, becoming part of the footage, becoming part of the story. The last thing I saw before my eyes stopped working was the timestamp in the corner of the screen. It had changed. It no longer read 1983 or 2023. It read, next. I don't know how long I've been here. Time moves differently when you're part of the architecture. I can feel the house around me, the studs and beams and insulation, and I can feel the others too. David and Patricia, Michael and Jennifer, Christopher with his Spider-Man mask. We're not dead. We're displayed. We're preserved in the moments of our collection, replaying on loop for whoever finds the tape next. I can see through the walls now. I can see the cul-de-sac, the dead lawns, the cracked driveways. I can see the rental car in the driveway, covered in leaves that have fallen and fallen and fallen. I can see my phone on the kitchen counter, the screen cracked, the battery long dead. Sometimes, rarely, someone new comes. A realtor showing the property, a teenager daring friends to enter, a podcaster looking for content. I try to warn them. We all try. But the warnings come out wrong, come out as whispers in the walls, as footsteps in the attic, as Polaroids that develop too slowly. The tape is up there now, in the shoebox, waiting. The camera is positioned on the floor, angled just right. The outlines on the floor have been refreshed. The paint's still wet, and there's a new one now. My size, my shape, ready for the next curious soul who thinks that horror is entertainment, that violence is fiction, that the past is dead and buried. It's Halloween tonight. I can feel it in the way the house breathes, in the way the walls expand and contract like lungs. The sun is setting. The key is in an unmarked envelope, on its way to someone new. I hope they don't watch the tape. I hope they run, but I know they won't. I know they'll sit where I sat, in the outline that fits them perfectly, and they'll press play, and they'll watch, and they'll understand what I understand now. Some seasons never end. They just wait for the next harvest. The camera is recording. The red light blinks, and somewhere, in the space between the walls, something with too many arms is putting on my face, practicing my voice, preparing to welcome whoever comes next.